Catus Maximus here, kind of review and comparison of a different kind of tool, writing tools. These are some of my favorite. We have gel rollers, we have paint pens or paint markers, and we have the quintessential Sharpie or permanent markers. We also have the Sharpies and the fine felt tips, but I do prefer these Staedtlers. Those are the ones that are a bit more comfortable than the Sharpies. Of course, Sharpie pens are the quintessential permanent marker. They've been around for a long time and are pretty reliable. They are used not just in offices, but in machine shops and all sorts of places, just because they do have the ability of writing on a variety of materials. Gel rollers I really like because of their nice deep color, but if you have like a really smooth paper, gel rollers really don't want to put out their ink very well, because the ball ends up skidding on a layer of gel when you have, say, magazine paper or those receipt paper. They really don't like writing on it. Where, of course, a Sharpie will write on anything perfectly. And since I have this up here, we'll talk about these paint pens. This is like a pretty decent paint pen right here. This is paint markers that come from Harbor Freight. And they are used all sorts industrially, particularly for marking things like steel. Junkyards will use them for marking auto parts because obviously it is a paint pen. It's actually filled with a liquid paint. I don't know if it's an acrylic or latex or anything, or a special formulation. And then they have these special tips, which are valves that you actually have to press down. The problem with them is that you really need to kind of use it or lose it when it comes to actual paint pens, because it will inevitably dry up in there and you'll be pumping it and it just won't want to come out. But they're absolutely unbeatable because of the amount of heavy paint that they put out. These are the type of pens that you can write on pottery and tile and all sorts of stuff, not just raw steel at a steel distributor. And they're amazing for that fact. It's just the type of thing that if you do get like a set of them, colored ones like say these Decos here, or Sharpie also makes some nice paint pens, that you really have a plan that you're going to try to use them so you can get your money's worth, because they are also quite a bit more expensive than any other type of pen, and they will inevitably dry up over time. So they kind of have a shelf life. Many have ball bearings. These Deco color ones I kind of like because they seem to hold up a little bit better with use. There are ones for like specifically for porcelain here, and these are some higher capacity ones, but most paint pens will have a ball bearing to stir up the paint, just like any other spray can, or I should say a can of spray paint. The Sharpies have really nice color. They also have a really good ink, but they have a pretty small diameter, kind of like the Deco color, making the prices a little bit cheaper. But I think it's probably better in most situations to have these smaller size paint pens, because unless you are using them daily and you need the big capacity, you're going to end up with a bunch of dried ink that you didn't use. So probably ultimately getting having the smaller form factor is wiser for the manufacturers, because it's just a fact you can't get around. If you're actually trying to output actual paint from a pen, you're going to have problems with clogging and drying. So might as well try to limit your losses by having smaller pens, and if it isn't enough, just getting another one. And of course, paint pens, due to their heavy pigmentation, come in a much wider variety of colors than these basic 6-piece sets. Let me clear those off. Now, as far as the Sharpies, it is nice that they do make these sets that have a lot of different colors, but many times with Sharpies, you're interested in high contrast. So that would be like the reds, the blacks, those types of colors. Some of the more intermediate colors are more for, drawing or artwork. When you like Sharpie felt tip markers are more for embellishing, but sometimes you have to get the big color sets just to get like a bright green like up here. Another thing I have noticed with Sharpies over the years is different colors seem to be, some colors seem to be more susceptible to drying out and you have to shake the pen, and other colors, say like these oranges, seem to work out real well. And so right here I just have a few lines showing the difference between a fine tip and a standard tip. And that's one of the reasons I like the Staedtler, at least for the fine tip ones, is because it seems that the Staedtlers really do pretty darn well for lasting a long time and not having to worry about them drying out so quickly. Plus, they also have this really nice triangular shape here, so they're just much easier to hold than the Sharpies, even though these Sharpies will provide a whole bunch of extra writing just because they have more capacity. They're a bit uncomfortable, and so that's why I recommend these little Staedtler felt tip ones. And the other thing I noticed with the Staedtlers is even after years of storage, literally years, they will write absolutely fine. It's really pretty surprising. Plus, Staedtler does things like this intelligent packaging, which can be folded over so these can stand up and you can get access to the colors pretty easily, as well as, of course, having larger sets with a few more colors. Now we'll get into gel pens because there are sets of like 200 colors with those. Actually, just to show off some of the colors here, let me turn off these 5000K lights. This is a high color rendering index light here, and we'll get that going. It's not particularly bright, but that will at least get just a little bit better rendering of those colors. The Sharpie caps at least are super bright, and then we can just see the array of colors on those gel rollers. And one of the reasons you would, if you're doing, anybody who does this, basic construction or, any kind of little drawings for, I should say, work rather than, art can be work too, but, little construction drawings, sometimes having an array of different colors can help a lot of people, even me, just help separate information. And so that's why I appreciate Sharpie coming out with the sets, even if Sharpies are a little inconsistent and some of them do end up drying much quicker than others. I'll probably end up switching after a while. The thing about Sharpies is at least you can trust them when you are going to use them regularly. They do have a nice, really good ink in them. And it does generally flow pretty consistently, for the reservoir, the volume of ink that's inside them. You just got to really make sure that the caps are on tight. Finally, to finish up with all these gel roll pens, these gel writers I really like. And another good brand would be these gel roll versions here. These are also really good, Japanese made. And then maybe third down would be like the hybrid gel writers. One of the big deals about gel pens is the nature of them. Because they are gel and because it's a solid pigment emulsified in a gel, they can, just any color that they can make a paint out of, they can put into a gel pen. And because they do put a heavier or thicker layer of ink down, you get really, really nice deep color. And because it's a water-based gel, I've had really good luck with gel writers just working after surprising periods of time. And surprisingly consistently, as long as you don't end up with bubbles, which sometimes does happen in the ink. And there are always those famous little pens that have the little rubber boot to try to prevent the tip from drying out. But even if that happens, just a little bit of water, will get them working again. They just happen to be really sensitive on paper. Like I was saying, with this type of paper, they just get all splotchy. Some of the issues that you'll see here, if my thing will ever focus, is like this really inconsistent pulsing, particularly on that black. That pulsing happens because the pen is writing and a little bit of ink and gel comes out, and then the ball skids on that really smooth paper, magazine paper, receipts. As soon as that layer of gel gets used up, then it grabs the ball again. So you really want, things like newspaper, cardboard, like this little bag here, this, breadsticks bag, something that has a high traction or more absorbent paper really works well. And that's one of the reasons they flow so well. So you can even just take like paper towels and actually write on them pretty easily with these gel rollers. And if they don't work, it's really surprising because they'll usually just gain traction and just work immediately. Like this is probably a pen that I haven't used for 6 months or a year. And if it isn't cooperating, make sure you have the cap on. Because they are water-based, I have found that if you do the shaking with the gel pen, that you can get splotches of ink. I was doing one earlier, big old splotch of ink came out of it. So make sure the cap's on, but really just doing a little bit of shaking, surprisingly enough, just will bring gel pens just right back to life. And just a little bit of writing to kind of get them going. And so it seems that the gel emulsification also provides a kind of a sealing against oxidization and drying of the ink. The other thing is it is a waterproof ink. Gel inks, because of that heavy pigment and the nature of the ink, really can be very long lasting. it will stay more color fast and resist more UV and all that kind of stuff than like an oil-based Bic pen. Standard Bic pens or oil pens, that heavier oil allows it to get traction on a wider variety of surfaces, but you just don't get as consistent a coloring. And they, of course, have little fancy ones like this, which are aluminum body pens. So you're paying a whole bunch of money for a little pen that feels abnormally heavy, but it's just the popularity of gel rollers now, just because you just get such a nice, consistent, dark line. But the deal is just being able to have a pen that you can really count on and don't have to worry about it drying out. The gel rollers are awesome. Just about every time, you got to watch out. Many of them have glitter in them, and so, or metal fleck, because they're more kind of artsy. And of course, kids and that type of stuff like them. Just how this camera focus I'm not liking so much, but you can see the metal fleck there. But it does make the ink much more visible. And of course, once again, with that emulsified pigment, the coloring on gel rollers can just be super bright, really stand out super well. You know, reds are just super deep reds. And that's one of the reasons the coloring works out so well on them, is it's just so dense that you can just do slight changes in hues like crayons, and just like a crayon, it will really deliver. It's really pretty surprising. And so I've always recommended to people, don't buy like Papermates and Bic pens. Just get just get regular colors, red, black, blue, gel pens. You'll be much better off because you'll just have much more legible writing. Also, the nature of a gel pen means that the pigment's coming out so strong that they make super fine ones. People were half millimeter, used to be like the super fine. You can get quarter millimeter or even 0.2 millimeter tip gel pens. We're talking, hair thin pens, pens that, architects and stuff and engineers would really like, just because they are just such a fine, thin line. And then the way the ink deploys, it can be very, very consistent. So anyway, that was another long video. I do a lot of reviews and comparisons, and thought, why not? With all these different pens, I might as well put a little bit of information out there and about the real common types. They're gel rollers, felt tip Sharpies, and then of course the infamous paint pens. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And I almost forgot, this is mid-April 2020, and in addition to the variety of issues at this time, there is also apparently a huge set of tornado storms in the southern United States that may have destroyed upwards of 1 million homes and businesses. And so I wanted to at least recognize that. If I had a bunch of money, I would do whatever I could to try to help out, but just wanted to say I hope everybody who may have been affected by those tornadoes can recover as quickly as possible and find as many of the things that they may have lost, because tornadoes certainly do throw stuff around. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.